Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified of future videos. This block is old Windmill, and it's 12-inch finished. Here's the diagram. It's a very simple block. We have flying geese units and squares. That's it. And we're going to make the flying geese with squares, 4 at a time flying geese. Here is what 4 blocks look like, block to block. This would be a great scrappy quilt. Of course, I think everything would be great scrappy quilt. Here are the patches. There are 3 of them. Patch A is a 3-inch finished square. We cut 3.5-inch squares. And we'll need 4 patches of the background and 4 patches of the accent fabric. And these are the squares. The background goes in the outer corners and the accent fabrics go right next to them. Patch B is a 3-inch finished half square triangle. We cut 3 7/8-inch squares. And if you're cutting patches, you'll cut these in half once diagonally for 2 patches. We need 8 patches of the accent fabric. And here are your AccuQuilt dies that will cut this, and here are the ones for the square. When you are using the AccuQuilt, you are cutting patches. You're cutting these triangles here. We're going to use the flying geese 4 at a time. Sometimes it's called no waste because there is no waste. So if you're going to do that, we'll cut the squares, but we will not subcut them, and you'll need to cut 4 squares this size. And patch C is a 6-inch finished quarter square triangle. This is the geese part of the flying geese. We cut 7 1/4-inch squares. If you're cutting patches, you cut them in half diagonally twice for 4 patches. And 4 patches are what we need of the background. Here are the AccuQuilt dies you can use to cut the patches. And to make the flying geese 4 at a time, we're going to cut 1 square this size, and we're not going to subcut it. Here are the fabrics, just 2 fabrics. This is patch A, the squares. We'll just leave those for now. And this is patch B. These will be the sky part of the flying geese, and this will be the geese part of the flying geese. In step 1, we're going to sew the 2 squares together. You simply sew the squares like this. It doesn't matter which direction you go in because whatever direction it is, it will work. Sew those together and press the seams open, and you'll make 4 of these. Now for the no waste flying geese 4 at a time, we're going to use these to make the flying geese. And if you're not familiar with this method, please stay tuned for a short tutorial that will show you how. And you'll make 4 flying geese. For flying geese 4 at a time, you need 1 large square and 4 small squares. The large square is the geese part of the flying geese, and the small squares are the sky part of the flying geese. On the back of each of the small squares, draw a diagonal line. Place 2 of the small squares like this on the large square, right sides together. You line up these edges and make sure these lines line up. Then you're going to stitch 1/4 of an inch on both sides of that drawn line. Here are the 2 stitching lines on either side of the marked line, and now we cut it in half on the marked line. Now you'll open these up and press your seams open on both sides. Cut off the nubs. Now you'll place another square in this corner. Here's your diagonal line, and stitch on either side of the diagonal line. And do that for both of these. When you're stitching, your stitches should come out or start right at this point, this intersection here, this 90-degree angle. Cut this in half on the diagonal line, and you have these 2. Press your seams open and cut off your nubs. And do the same for this one. 4 flying geese. For step 3, we'll take the flying geese and the square units we made in steps 1 and 2 and sew them together like this. Flying geese like this, and your squares like this and stitch them together. When you stitch these together, you'll want to put the flying geese on top. So let me flip it around. As you stitch your 1/4 inch on this side, you'll want to make sure you don't cut off this point. When you reach this point here, stitch right above the point. Don't stitch on any part of this white fabric, and then finish your 1/4 inch all the way off. Then you'll press your seams open and you'll have 4 of these units. Now you have your units finished, and the last step you have to do is lay the blocks out. Just look at the diagram and lay them out. And there's your old windmill. Now sew these 2 together and these 2. Press the seams open, then sew the 2 rows together. Before we see the block, the video I'm going to recommend for you today is called Color Junction. It's one of the few videos I have done that requires a pattern. And at the time I made the video, it was a pattern you could buy, but now it's put into a book. If you don't want to buy the book or make the quilt, it has some interesting tips for you on how to cut and sew equilateral triangles. So I hope you enjoy Color Junction. There's a link in the description, and there's also a link up here. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified of future videos.